Yesterday we had in London the Blizzard's The War Within PR event, where they made the alpha of the game available to play for a few hours, and then they announced and expanded on a few of the features coming in the expansion. So to spare you having to scroll through 25 different pages of news or having to sift through a whole bunch of different posts about the event, we are now going to cram all of these news in a single video. So we are starting with the news with the, the smaller ones, like for example about the new allied race coming in the War Within, which is the Earthen. The simplest TLDR is it's dwarves with different shiny metal skins. That's pretty much what it is. The main news about this is that now the Horde gets a playable dwarf model, basically. Second bit of news, which isn't actually news, it's the news of the upcoming news that might come later on, which is the Dracthyr class restriction being removed somewhere early in the War Within, as per Ion Azikostas himself. Not expected and guaranteed at the release of the expansion, but likely early on the War Within, you will be able to play your, warrior as a Dracthyr. Another bit of tiny news is the dynamic dragon riding system. The TLDR is Blizzard is making some 450 flying mounts able to dragon ride in the War Within. There's going to be a button in-game. The whole thing, because we are out of Dragonflight, is now being renamed to Skyriding. And you will be able to opt whether or not you want to have steady flight, which is the current normal default version of flying, or skyriding for all of the mounts that are going to be enabled to have this dragon riding mode on. There is still going to be a glyph system for your dragon riding mode with a few nodes being removed or changed, but the general idea is that now you have hundreds more mounts being able to dragon ride. Continuing with the smaller news, we have a bunch new updated models for characters, which gave us an interesting look on the expansion, because you have Alleria, Windrunner, getting her model changed. And then you also have Anduin, of course, getting his model changed to match what we saw in the trailer for the expansion. But then we also have Moira and Dagran Tori's-san also getting their model change. And finally, essentially a brand new addition, Faring Lothar, also receiving a new model change. Now, what was interesting about these remodels is that we are basically talking just about the Alliance. This is now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 characters getting boosted up in their looks, and they are all Alliance side. Nothing to be seen about any Horde character, which is also understandably hard to do if you continue to, kill them off. On to a few more competitive news we already have. We don't even have Season 4 out with that dungeon pool. We already have the dungeon pool of Season 1 of The War Within. I guess we can say the first announcement is the next expansion will continue with the rotation that was planned for Dragonflight. So there are 8 dungeons in The War Within, but the first season of Mythic Plus will only have 4 of those new dungeons. And the other 4 are going to be older dungeons, updated to Mythic Plus standards. So for Season 1 of The War Within, the 4 older dungeons chosen to be part of the Mythic Plus pool are Mists of Tir Nasyth, the Necrotic Wake, Siege of Boralus, and Grim Battle. So we have double Shadowlands dungeons, plus a BFA dungeon, and then all the way back down Memory Road into Cataclysm. I guess the theme of the recurring dungeons is minigames, because in Mist of Tir Nasyth, of course, there is the lovely maze minigame. In the Necrotic Wake, you have the whole thing about the Kyrian weapons to play around. In Grim Battle, you have, funnily enough, the dragon riding minigame, which no doubt will trigger people to no end in case someone fails to kill the proper packs they wanted to kill for their route. That is definitely going to have to be addressed for the dungeon. And then lastly, Siege of Boralus, which doesn't really have much of any minigame other than insufferable RP, unknowing bosses, different starting zones from Horde and Alliance, as well as terrible tight narrow corridors for trash pools. But yeah, besides that, great dungeon, right? We certainly hope, by the time the expansion is out, many of these problems of these older dungeons will be addressed. Now, after that, Blizzard has expanded on the concept of warbands coming in the War Within, also tying together the account-wide features coming in the expansion, including the much-awaited reputation being account-wide. Blizzard explained how they approached their account-wide mentality. They pointed out most things, most reps will become account-wide, as well as many/most of the achievements. They made a few examples, right, of things that might require your character to do certain things that wouldn't make sense to allow you to have those things be done on multiple characters, like for example, Insane in the Membrane achievement is still only doable on a single character. Other, let's say, prestigious achievements like the Gladiator achievements are still going to be only doable by a single character. But many other, even down to things like Keystone Hero or achievements or titles from defeating bosses, will become account-wide, together with, of course, the reputation you are farming. There is now going to be even something like the offer, basically the offer for you to get extra reputation the time you complete a quest for the first time. So you can, for example, now, let's say, complete all of the side quests in a certain zone with one character, and then level your alt and complete all of the side quests of a different zone and collect the reputation all together that way, rather than having to do all of the side quests on all of the zones every time on every single character. Now you only have to do it basically once per account to get the same amount of reputation, for example. They also made leveling up faster. Now there is going to be an achievement, a warband achievement, that every time you get a character to max level, your entire account gets 5% additional experience up to level 80. So 5 more characters get to level 80, you get 25% more experience on all of your next characters you are going to be leveling. Another thing they added, for example, are features like the bank system. Now your warband is going to have access to a bank. It will work like any other banks, like for example, you can add extra tabs for money, and the bank can share items, seamlessly, including things like a reagent bank. So now you no longer have to have the super triggering thing where, for example, you are an alchemist on 3 different characters and you have to constantly switch who gets the herbs to craft what. And then you have to mail the herbs to another character, log in, use the herbs, and then you want to use the herbs on a third character, you have to send him those herbs, etc., etc. Now you can keep all that stuff in your warband bank and have them available for everyone. They even expanded this system when it comes to items. Now, some items, we don't know exactly from how many activities, but some items will have a new type of binding system. Rather than being soul-bound or being bind on equip, for example, these will be war-bound until equipped. So that will be a similar thing of pseudo account bound for some pieces of gear. Likely this won't be something coming from the Great Vault, also likely not something coming from the raid, but very likely pretty much every piece of questing gear, piece of items you drop from the open world, likely even things like world quests, very likely something coming from normal dungeons or Mythic Zero dungeons will also be warbound. Unlikely that raids or Mythic Plus gear will be warbound, but for the concept, for the idea of gearing up your alts faster, this is definitely going to be an easier tool for you to gear up your other characters. So that is another very good addition when it comes to creating more of a big family of characters in the expansion, rather than having every one of your characters and alts feeling like they are an individual single piece in the game, a stranger to all of your other characters. Now back to the competitive side of things. In a surprising turn of events, Blizzard goes back on their original disastrous decision of making Heroic and Mythic Raiding Week come out at the same time, a feature they tested for the first time back in Sepulcher, the last tier of Shadowlands, and now they just don't do it anymore. Now we will have the first week of the season be only Heroic, and then only open Mythic the week after that. They cited as the reasons for this pretty much the same things players were telling them were going to be problems, like having guilds feel like they have to spend every available hour doing Mythic Plus spam on the first week in order to get geared for the Mythic raid. or raid bosses having a larger power difference between the first and the last mythic boss because of the lack of heroic week, which allows you to get a higher item level so you can smooth the curve of difficulty of the raid better, or things like a lack of available class tuning between the heroic week and the mythic week, and why not the first couple of days of the Race of War first being nothing but heroic splits and basically just boredom. So Blizzard admits that was a stupid idea, and in the War Within we will get our week 1 chill, laid-back, heroic week again. Yes, big win. The other, I guess we can say, competitive bit of news is going to be the newly and lastly added hero talents. Now we're only left with a handful, still missing, but we have gotten the crossover between marksmanship and survival for Hunter, the one between Arcane and Fire Mage for mages, the one between Mistweaver and Brewmaster for monks, the one between Discipline and Holy Priest, which was previously announced but received so many complaints it was reworked, and then the one between Discipline and Shadow Priest for priests, and then finally the one for Affliction and Demo Warlocks. This also came together with the first I guess you can call it the first round of balance changes for the expansion, so not related to the hero talents but to your talent trees, your original talent trees. We have quite a few changes there, but we don't have time to go and list them through in this video alone. Pretty interesting and positive changes for monks in particular, and a few disappointing ones, either because of the negative changes or because the changes are missing altogether. But we will have room to talk about that in its own video. After all this is said, we can now finish by sifting through the announced armor sets for the War Within expansion. There are some interesting ones or some novel ideas. Some of these you could tell by yourself who they were for, like the rogue, the druid, the warrior you just saw. Of course, you can tell Hunter apart for being ugly as sin. Then you have monk. You have the surprisingly super cool evoker set, which you will never get to see unless you play with the only toy you can play when playing evoker. You have a super cool troll creepy tribe like DK set for once, which is pretty nice looking, and then we finish with the clown of the village, which is Paladin. Interesting choice to go with a green questing set and then some superly oversized and buffingly comical gigantic wings. Funnily enough, the normal questing rep gear type of armor sets you also get are actually pretty high level and even cooler than some of the announced tier sets, like the male one, for example, is pretty badass, but more importantly, the plate one is easily outdoing the Paladin one, for example, for being just a simple open world set. But those were the armor set appearances that were determined from the features and the news about the next expansion. So this is pretty much all that was announced at the event by Blizzard. Of course, as we keep going by, we continue to have more data mining going on, more news. As we know, the alpha now is down and running for the War Within. So as time goes by, we'll get to see more and more news and more changes about the expansion. But this was pretty much the recap of the things that were announced yesterday at the event by Blizzard. So with this out of the way, we can now leave each other on this Thursday, I think? Yeah, on this Thursday. Thanks, of course, as usual, to all of the Patreon supporters for the contribution and the help to the growth of the channel, which can, as usual, still be given completely for free by liking and commenting down below on this video, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these bird chirping things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, well, it's only right, after complaining about being too hot, that we have a full week of sub 10 degrees. I guess I asked for it.